When do I need to register for a tax? Now I'm receiving rental income. Hi, I'm Kimberly Shapcotts, qualified chartered accountant, property investor and entrepreneur. Let's sit down and have a chat. You decided to buy your property in your own name, so now you're going to be getting rental income, which means at some point you are going to have to register for tax to complete a self-assessment tax return. Now, one question I get asked very regularly is, when do I need to register? So let's start very briefly at the beginning of the transaction. So the first thing that you'll have done is you'll have thought, I'm going to buy this in my own name. So that's great, you've made a decision, you've moved forward. Now that you've bought that property, you might do a bit of refurb, you might do a bit of work, but you're not receiving any income yet. Now we're on to getting our tenants, and you get your first tenants in. Now this is quite a crucial moment. This is when you have started receiving your rental income. So you've now got something to report to HMRC. Now that doesn't mean instantly you have to do something in terms of actually putting a tax return. It means that you've now got to make sure that you are registered with HM Revenue and Customs to complete a self-assessment tax return. Now this is the crucial point where you need to make sure you've done it by a certain date. So at the moment we are in the 2022-2023 tax year. Now if I started receiving rental income today in May 2022, that means my first set of income is in the tax year 2022 to 2023. Now, I don't have to report that income until after the end of this tax year. So for my example here today, I'm not going to have to report anything until we get to the 5th of April 2023. So when do I actually need to tell HMRC I have got something to report? Now this is where you've got a little bit of time. But I would generally say get registered straight away so that you aren't late with any registration. But the date you have to have registered with HMRC is by the 5th of October following the tax year that you start receiving that income. So that means for my example, where I've started receiving in the tax year 2022 to 2023, that means I have to register that income by the 5th of October 2023. So as you can see, May 2022, I've got quite a while to get myself registered. However, I would say don't think that that means to leave it all the way until the deadline. If you do miss registering for self-assessment, there is a £100 penalty for late registration. Now, they may decide not to issue it, but generally this is an automatic penalty. So therefore, I would just make sure that you don't miss that deadline, which means you don't need to wait until near the deadline. You can get registered as soon as you are aware that you need to be reporting something. One thing I would say is just make sure if you do register that you don't suddenly get a tax return for the tax year that is currently being reported. So my example here of needing to do something for the 2022-2023 tax return, if I register today in May 2022, they may decide to issue me with a 2021-2022 tax return, which would be due by January 2022. Now obviously, based on the fact that I've only just started receiving rental income, I don't actually need to report anything, but they've issued a tax return. If they issue you with a tax return, you do need to complete it. You cannot ignore it. If you ignore it, then you will get a penalty for non-submission and potentially non-payment. However, if you don't have anything to report, you may not have anything to pay, but you may still need to do a tax return. So that's just a little hiccup to be aware of, especially in that first year when you register. This might suggest that actually you may want to wait until after the 5th of April, the tax year that you need to report, just so that they don't issue one for the previous year. However, there is an argument for both ways of registering as soon as you know, so you know you're not late, or waiting till the period when you need to report so that you know you're not going to get another tax return. It doesn't matter either way. It's just about being vigilant to make sure that if they do issue something, that you do report at the right time, because we don't want anyone getting any penalties. It's money we don't need to be giving away to the tax authorities. As you can see here, the key detail is when you're receiving the rental income. It's nothing to do with when you buy the property, it's all about when you're receiving income from that property. So if you've bought a property a year or so ago and you've been refurbing it or doing works and not had it actually rented out, then you don't need to be reporting anything. But the crucial point is when you actually start receiving an income from property, that you will need to be reporting. Hopefully today you've discovered when you should be registering for tax and what the deadline for that is. If you do have any questions on when you should be registering, do leave a comment below. Please like the video and do subscribe to the channel. And let's make tax less taxing. Let's make tax less taxing.